Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Luciana. Uh, this is Catherine Hine we're with. She is a resigned attorney from the Ohio Bar who resigned in 2019. And we are WLJA, Common Law Under God. Catherine, take it away.
Welcome, everybody. Some of you may remember me from WLJA radio that I was doing like between 2015 2017, where we were focused on the problems of corrupt government, which is basically what most people were seeing at that time. We're getting more into looking behind, what created those problems in more recent years. At that time, my broadcast was like in three parts. One of the broadcasts was who judges the judges, which was the answer to that question was basically they do, they judge
Exactly.
each other. The other broadcast was God's Healing Bounty, which was about alternatives to corporate medicine, and then there was a third broadcast of oh, yeah, called it Bedlam in America, which focused on one aspect of the corporate state's um, human trafficking agenda. There are many, many forms of it, and that's basically how our so-called government functions is through human trafficking. That's a big moneymaker, and everything associated with that. And I think it's easier to understand what is what is taking place, but more importantly, what the solutions are if we understand what's going on to be a massive uh, conglomerate criminal corporation, a global conglomerate. And when you understand that, things start to fall into place, and you're not focused so much on ridiculous non-solutions such as voting in their corporate elections where they've already pre-selected the candidates that will do their bidding regardless of the outcome. There isn't any choice. In the words of FDR, presidents are not elected; they are selected, and that goes for all the other subcategories of so-called government office from the top down. Um, I wanted to, as we go into the solution, which is what WLJA Common Law Under God is going to be focused on, I want to just draw people's attention to Genesis 1:26, which is um, the the great gift from God of dominion over His creation. He gave us this pretty blue planet, and He expected us to take care of it and all of His creations. And He gave us a lot of other gifts as well, including all our unalienable rights. But he gave us the gift that has some strings attached, and the strings were that we would take care of it. And what did we do? We turned it over to Satanists. And that's what we've done, for a long time. If you look at 1 Samuel chapter 8, verses 11 through 18, and this was already after a time of uh, there were small little courts that would resolve disputes. Moses um, headed some of these, and I might be out of order here. Um, I'm not remembering right offhand. Was Moses before or after Samuel? In any case, I think he was before. I'm not a Bible scholar, but I know a few things that are helpful to our finding our solution. And if you'll look at 1 Samuel chapter 8, verses 11 through 18, God specifically did warn us about what would happen if we insisted on not self governing and on having a king above us. instead of just living by his word. And, the prediction was exactly what has, in fact, happened over the centuries and is really happening on steroids now. And that is, you have a king, you want a king so badly, and the king is going to conscript your sons, he's going to employ your daughters and your sons and take a tenth of what you have or more. And, you will essentially become enslaved.
Yep, and we're seeing that happen now.
Yeah.
We're really seeing it now.
And people still, they think that they are going to cut through the enslavement by picking a better class of master. And that isn't how it works. That's not the equivalent of freedom, to have a kinder, gentler master. And there's a great video, and I think we'll put a link to that. It's called The Jones Plantation. I urge people to watch that. It's a 12-minute investment of time. And it points out that whatever you want to call it, if you're still in a position of being a slave with a master over you, you can have a better master, and you're still going to be a slave.
Correct.
So,
and we'll put that link. We'll put that link in the video once it's up on our YouTube page and on Rumble.
Great. Wanted to mention too, when what we thought of as the country of the United States of America was formed with the Declaration of Independence, when it declared its independence, and we have a link to that on our website. There's a passage that says we hold these truths to be self-evident, and then there's the part about all men are created equal. Well, that didn't exactly happen. To secure these rights, that was referring to the unalienable rights that the Declaration admitted were from God. This was before the Constitution, folks. This is at the beginning, 1776, July 4th. To secure these rights, those unalienable rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. So the original idea was they could not impose government without consent, but it also gives us the idea that we have to have government in order to secure rights, that the government will protect our rights. Has it ever been that way? I don't think it has. But that's been the, the rhetoric anyway from the beginning. Well, we need government to protect our rights. And actually, the origin of the word government is the governed part means to control or administer, and meant is mind. So governments are for mind control, not to protect anybody's rights. At least that's the origin of the word. And oftentimes the etymology of the word does give you some clue as to what the word's really about. So anyway, I'm still immersed in the problem here, and kind of how we got here. But that the purpose of that is so that people aren't relying on the Declaration or the Constitution for their rights. We don't get our rights from the Constitution, and the Declaration acknowledged that governments don't have any power to give you rights,
or take them away. Mm-hmm. They gave themselves that power, and it's gone on for so long. People just think that's the way it is. That's the way it's always been, and they don't know how to break out of that belief.
Well, Well, there are some prototypes for us, some models, from the past, and going back to um, early America. The founding fathers were not Christians, and they were not really the leaders that we've been told that they were, but they were behaving themselves at that point, because if they had not done so, if they had not um, made sure that in their documents um, they were at least giving the semblance that they were protecting the rights of the people. These are the people that spilled their blood so that the John Jays and the John Adamses and the Benjamin Franklins wouldn't be hanged by King George as traitors. And so they, at the beginning, when they were forming these documents, they knew that they better, play it straight with the people, more or less.
Yeah.
And then less and less all the time. So that's why someone asked me that the other day. Why did they give us the Bill of Rights? The right to free speech and the right to to bear arms and all this stuff. Why did they do that? Well, they knew they personally owed the people a lot. They would not be able to play games with them, at least for more than about a generation. Yeah. So, but we have much greater rights than the ones that are enumerated in the Bill of Rights. And, a lot of people think, oh, well, our rights come from the Constitution. Those are just the ones they admit to. Right. But, we don't get our rights from there, and the Declaration admits that. So that's an important point. Because, and I saw a posting recently on Facebook about, well, if you don't have, if you don't know what your rights are, you don't have any. Well, yeah, that's probably true. But what would most people answer if you asked, what are your rights? What are they? Could you just rattle them off?
Right.
Well, here's the simple answer, because if I were to enumerate every single right we have, we'd be here all night.
Right, exactly.
We have basically an almost infinite number of rights, and but it can all be summed up by just saying that we have the right to be free. I think the Bible is nothing but clear that God always wanted us to have the free choice to do as He said or to do otherwise, because He didn't want to create a bunch of robots. He gave us freedom, and so we have the right to do whatever we wish, so long as we do no harm to others.
Exactly.
That's the paraphrase of the Golden Rule.
Right. We have a right to be left alone, to raise our families. We have a right to not have our children taken away, to not have our elderly taken away, to not have our property taken away. And it seems like government has instilled this fear in people with their codes and their statutes that they have a right to interfere in your private life. They have a right to take your child. They have a right to take your elderly. They have a right to take your property. If this and if that, and the list is endless on the reasons why they'll say they have rights to everything that belongs to you. It's insane. It's insane. And for so many years, decades, people are complaining and exposing what these courts are doing, what these judges are doing, which is unlawful, all of it. And there's constant protests, constant complaints, constant exposures, videos, podcasts, on the news, in the papers, and groups discussing it, groups on Facebook, groups on Twitter, groups all over the place, and nobody's come up with a solution on how to stop this. Everybody just exposes it, protests, and still it's going on. It's going on, and it's unbelievable to me. There's still no solution, but I think we've come up with a solution here in Ohio, and it's a
part of the
lawful
solution. It's the beginning of the solution, anyway.
beginning of a solution. It's a beginning of a solution.
We have formed, or a number of us here have formed a common law court, Ohio Circuit Court of Record, which we're entitled to do. Because
We'll put the link to that, to the Ohio Circuit Court of Record, in the comments as well when the video is posted on YouTube and Rumble and elsewhere. Okay, so they could click the link and go right to the court's website. I could pull that up. Okay, I could pull that up here and show it.
All right. As far as the right, the right to form a court is the right that every sovereign has, and that's going back to the days of Moses.
Yeah,
it's an inherent part of the rights of a free people.
That's something I think people needs to be explained to people. I don't think people understand that we have the right to do this, and they think that we're just a few crazy people that decided to do this, and they'll label us sovereign citizens, they'll label us this, label us that, and that's not the truth. The truth is we do have a right to do this, we the people, and we have done it in the proper way. And on our website, if you can you see the screen here, Catherine? Of the website?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And on the website, in here, the link, we have a link. Hold on, let me get out of here. Under founding documents. And in our founding documents, we have in there our notice of the court formation. Yeah,
right.
The notice of court formation. I believe in there as well is we also made this public and posted it in a public newspaper. I believe, was it 3 times, Catherine?
It was a prima facie newspaper online.
Yeah, and nobody contested it. We also sent notice to the Ohio Attorney General, David Yost, and he was notified of the formation of this court and that we were about to start running it. And we had it all formed and we were about to start running it. And also Maureen O'Connor, who's retired now recently, but was the Chief Justice for the Ohio Supreme Court. She was also sent notice of the formation of the Ohio Circuit Court of Record and how we formed it, and lawfully. And both the Attorney General for the state of Ohio and the Chief Justice from the Supreme Court of Ohio had stayed silent. They did not respond. They had nothing to say about it because they know we legally had a right to do so. So they have not. We've had it up and running now. I believe, what is it now, Catherine? 1.5 years?
We're going into 2 years, I think.
Yeah, I believe it was September of 2021 when we put it up and started. Anyways, on here you can see the founding documents. You can look through that. There's info links on here where you can go into, and we'll go into the Dun and Bradstreet, Catherine, because we want to show them how these courts that they're going into, and we've gone into as well, are actually private corporations. Corporations, and with Dun and Bradstreet numbers, and we'll show you that in a moment. Also in here, if someone wanted to file with our court, there's the filing guidelines in here, and it explains what you may do, what you would want to do to file with our court.
I want to just throw in there that, filing with our court is for people who are free. It is not for people who are chattel of the corporate state. And most of us have signed documents agreeing to be chattel of the corporate state. And we can get into that because you're not really able to do anything as a free man or woman if you are signed up as one of their slaves, one of their belongings.
Right. And in the link here on the bottom left, status documents, you can click on there and you could see some of our members of the court, and you can click and it would open up the documents that show how we have all corrected our status. Do you want to explain, Catherine, the process of doing that?
Yeah. Through the years, we sign document after document after document with various corporations or the agents of various corporations. But the most important ones that give up the most sovereignty that we have, which is, just our God-given right to self-govern. The most important one that we give up is when we sign the voter registration. Anytime you see that word registration, it means that you are making yourself chattel to the king. Registration means the king. So you're surrendering that, and also as a registered voter, you are agreeing to be a guarantor or a surety for the corporate state's debts. That's what the national debt is primarily, is debt to us. And so when we repudiate the voter registration, we cannot later be accused of, nobody can ever come in and say, look, these people made debt, incurred debt to us, and you stood as a guarantor of that debt, so we're going to take your house. Well, if you're not a registered voter, and voter registration lists are used by them when they invest and when they take out loans. So we're considered to be, the guarantors of all their harebrained Wall Street, derivative schemes. Okay? If you don't want to be that, don't be a registered voter.
Right.
It's not like you're voting to change anything anyway. You're only voting in their rigged corporate elections. Right. So that's an important one. The other signature that we want to remove the effect of, because we get, our signatures are powerful things. So we want to correct what we did because we were lied to about what that signature would mean. The other one is, it's really more of a signature by one of our parents on our birth documents that enabled the corporate state to pervert our name into an all capital name that they consider to be a legal fiction person. When they
and they'll tell you that's not true. That's a conspiracy theory. That's not true. It's true.
Yeah. It's in their codes what a person is, and it'll usually say something like, but you have to know what the language means, and that's not that easy. A person includes. All right, let me give another example.
Before we continue, I just want to remind everyone who you are. Okay, Catherine Hine, and I'm just to remind everyone, Catherine Hine was a practicing attorney in the state of Ohio, not for a year or two, for 40 years before she resigned in disgust. And I'm also going to put a link to her resignation, where when she resigned in 2019, she exposed these corrupt private corporations they call courts for what they really are. So I just want to remind everyone, you're not just sitting here. This is someone who was a member of the bar, an attorney of 40 years. She knows this from the inside. She is telling us because she knows from the inside what's really going on. Okay, I'm sorry.
And
Go ahead,
I
Catherine.
was just as deceived as anybody else, and I was just as sloppy when it comes to when I read statutes and the statutes apply to persons. I didn't give it a second thought. I thought, well, that means people. No, it took actually lay people later to explain to me, no, that's not what they're talking about. And then my eyes were opened a little bit more all the time.
It took me a while, a couple of years to believe this, to understand it, comprehend it, and finally say, oh no, I'm done. I'm done. This is evil as it gets. And no wonder this is happening. Go ahead. So do you want to explain then the notice of the rebuttal of presumptions that was created by the birth registration and why you want to do this?
Yeah, they use that birth registration to do a whole bunch of other stuff to us. And so that's kind of a basic seminal document that you need to rebut. Sometimes I have people's parents actually sign affidavits that I had no intention by signing the birth certificate to make my child, a chattel of the corporate state. But if your parents are no longer living, you can always rebut that presumption yourself. Your parents didn't have that intention, and so you can rebut that, and then thereafter they're not going to be able to say, well, you've agreed to be, to guarantee what we do, and if you've got that document, you can rebut that. Now the third one we require is kind of a spin-off of the rebuttal of the rescission of your signature on the voter registration, and that's a repudiation of United States corporate citizenship. That doesn't say you're not an American anymore. It says you're not an asset of the corporate United States. And if you want to look up United States and Dun & Bradstreet, you will see it's a private for-profit corporation or cabal of corporations.
Yeah, we'll show them that in a second.
Yeah, right. So that's what that is. A lot of people hesitate. Oh, I don't want to, especially people who have been naturalized citizens. Why do we have to be a citizen? Well, first of all, what is a citizen? In their Black Law Dictionary, a citizen is someone who was formerly a subject of the crown, and that's not what we are, and certainly that's not what we want to agree to be. Now, of course, there is some evidence, that irrefutable evidence, that the Treaty of Paris that concluded the Revolutionary War did not give us independence. We were still considered under the thumb of King George. And who got us that? We won the victory on the battlefield. And who sold us out at the peace treaty? 3 bar members: John Adams, John Jay, and Benjamin Franklin. You can go online and look it up. The Treaty of Paris. Usually a peace treaty is signed at the place of a place where the victor controls things. This was not signed in America. It was signed in Paris. And it's specific that King George continued to consider the colonies to be his. So that's never been resolved. But truly, to me, it doesn't matter. Everything they've done has been done by fraud and has been done illegitimately. So I'm concerned with what we can do at our local level. And if you notice, nobody on the corporate media wants to talk about what's going on day to day in our lives, the day to day injustices. The human trafficking, for example, which is a daily part of our lives, whether it's traffic court, we're subject to being arrested at any time for almost any pretext. Back when I did WLJA, I interviewed a guy who wrote the book, 3 Felonies a Day, which is, if you actually looked at every statute and code that they created, we would all be guilty of on average, 3 felonies a day.
At least.
At least, yeah. Just because they say so, their statutes and codes are not law. They're just corporate bylaws. Now, if you work for them or you agree to be one of theirs, you may be bound by those statutes and codes. And in disentangling ourselves from that system is not that easy. Fortunately, they've admitted that you can be sovereign in some areas and not sovereign in other areas. There's a U.S. Supreme Court case that one of theirs that admits that. I don't cite their cases because they are authoritative for anybody but them. They're not authoritative for us, but they do admit things that are useful to us, and when they do, we use them. But I just finally found, anybody was wondering why I was scrolling so crazily, that as far as our authority to create a court, in the matter of Chisholm versus Georgia, 2 United States 419, a 1793 case from U.S. Supreme Court, they admitted that the source of all law was and therefore remains us, the people. And this is a quote, just beneath the ultimate sovereignty of God, as far back as at the Revolution, the sovereignty devolved on the people, and they are truly the sovereigns of the country, but they are sovereigns without subjects, with none to govern but themselves. The citizens of America are equal as fellow citizens and as joint tenants in the sovereignty. So we're the source of all law, and the corporate agents have admitted it. Once they admit it, it stays admitted. They can't. There's no do-overs. There's no taking it back. So they can't exactly say that when we take on our responsibilities to self-govern and we make decisions from our courts, that we don't have the authority to do that. Of course we do. Of course we do, and it comes from God, Genesis 1:26, and they've admitted to it. So what more do you want? I mean, so that's what we've done. A number of us have created this Ohio Circuit Court of Record, and you'll see the Luciana's going to post the link, OCCR2021.com, and you can see exactly what we've done. As she went over, the formation, and then you can actually see there's a lot of moving parts here, folks. But not as much. It's not as bad as in their system.
And there's also on there where you could contact us, and there's an email address and a phone number if you have any questions, we want to hear from you. We want a phone call. We're trying to help, you know,
Right.
people that are finding themselves um, tied up in these courts and just being railroaded and run over and for years. And people are spending thousands and thousands. I know personally in a situation, a case I had. Maybe we'll talk about this in a later. I don't want to make this about what happened with me that got me here, but it's bad. And it took me probably about 4 to 5 years before I was able to. I knew something was wrong. I knew how in the world do they do? How can they be getting away with this? And nobody's doing anything when you tell them, people that should be looking into it. And I'm like, something's not. And then it was 5 years later. And then even after 5 years later, it still took me another year or two to finally correct my status and close the door on these private corporations, knowing you have to realize they're all bar members. They're all members of the same bar. And what they protect each other against their wrongdoing. And if they do not, they have a price to pay, a heavy price to pay. Do you want, actually, Catherine, you mentioned this in your resignation letter, right? What happened? What was the attorney's name? When they expose what's going, and they go against, oh, judge, you can't do that. You can't do that to this person. You want to explain what happens to an attorney when they do that, and why the attorneys all, they keep their mouths shut, or they protect their peers, their other bar members, when they damage people like this and take their money, knowing full well they are not working for their benefit.
Well, we don't. I'm not sure I know what you're referring to exactly.
But who was the attorney you mentioned in your resignation letter, who they arrested and they put him in jail?
Richard Fine.
Richard Fine.
Yeah, but basically the attorneys I know of who have really suffered a lot probably did not understand what we're talking about today, to be truthful. But they knew something was wrong, and they were critical of judges. And when they were critical of judges, and they thought that they could correct this within the system, they found out that, well, in the case of Richard Fine, I think he was locked up in his 70s for a number of years. And there's another attorney, I think, I can't remember his name, but he knew that he had no obligation to pay income tax, but he didn't know. He was arguing his points within their system. You argue their law to them, and they will twist it so it comes out the way they want it to come out. You cannot do that and expect anything good to come out. On occasion, it will. And I had that happen over the 40 years I was in the business. Wow. But, yeah, that's mostly, in fact, when I did WLJA, I was curious how many attorneys have been disbarred or whatever for criticizing judges, and I came up with about 27 of them I could just come up with off the top of my head in the Midwest, in Ohio and Pennsylvania, and
in Ohio there was one that the news got a hold of, and it was what's her name, Elizabeth? I can't pronounce. Yeah, she was an attorney. They jailed her when she exposed and came out and exposed what was going on.
And I don't think she still understands to this day. And I think she would still like to get back in. And she can come in and explain that if she wants to, if I'm misrepresenting her. But I think that's the case.
Yeah, I would like to understand too what's going on with her, because she saw firsthand. She knew there was corruption going on. She was explaining what was going on and fighting against it. And what did they do? Her own bar members, judges, and that, they all turned on her. accused her of this and that, ran her through the mud. She lost her law license. She lost her license. Didn't she have a pharmacy license or something like that?
She had a pharmacy license. They took that from her too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She spent, I don't know how much time in jail.
8 years, I think.
Wow. That is in Jesus. But
And,
see, what I think is happening, she knows what they can do to her. I think it's fear. A lot of people everybody's operating under fear, even a lot of the attorneys, and
they probably more so than others in many ways.
Yeah, they know you go against them, you're going to be blackballed in the legal society amongst your peers. As a matter of fact, attorneys know that if they go against a judge or they expose what's really going on in these courts, and I know I could just feel some people will be watching this saying, "Listen to what she's saying. She's crazy. Oh my God, listen to this. It's the truth. It's happening." And Catherine, I think I have documented some audio, and I'm not sure whether or not I can release it. And we'll discuss this.
You're talking about in your traffic case?
No, I'm talking about the audio.
That's pretty eye-opening too. I mean, the guy just suddenly, it's like his head swivels around.
Right.
Screaming at you.
Right. I should play that for everybody so they could hear. It's about a. Want to play it?
Yeah, go ahead. This is because Luciana. All right, she was trying to make the point that there's a big difference in legal effect with the name Luciana in upper and lowercase spelling, and if it's all capital. And when the guy's sitting behind the bench and he's asking you, "What is your name?" you can't tell the difference in spelling for doing it orally. And so that was the point that Luciana was trying to make, and it just drove him nuts.
And this is what's going on that they don't tell you when they say when they call your name and this was a traffic ticket in Parma, Ohio, where I knew that I knew I wasn't speeding. I knew that they were watching a lot in that area. I get back to where I was going. I knew I wasn't speeding. So when I got pulled over and got the traffic ticket, my husband, my son, everybody's saying, just pay it. It's $200. Just pay it. Get over with. Forget about it. And I'm like, why am I going to pay them $200 when I know I wasn't speeding?
I'm going to the point. Who are they to tell you how you should behave behind the wheel on the road if you're not harming it or endangering anyone?
Right. And when I went into court, that's when my husband, I think his eyes opened up a little bit to what's going on here in these courts, because the magistrate, when I said he wanted me to plead, and I said, well, I'm not comfortable pleading because where's the evidence that I was speeding? Because I know I wasn't speeding. So he says, well, you need to plead. And I'm like, all right, well, I'm not comfortable doing that. He's like, well, I'll plead for you. And I'm like, all right, well, I never gave you power of attorney to act on my behalf, so I don't know how you're going to do that. He's like, well, I am. And he pleaded not guilty for me and said, you'll come to trial. And that's where everything will happen. And then, what he said also, the magistrate, not the judge, the magistrate, before I went to trial, the magistrate said to me, he goes, oh, these police officers are out there every day, all the time. They can just tell when you're speeding. He says, they can tell when you're speeding. I'm like, the second we didn't even we just started leaving the court doors when my husband looked at me and said, did you hear what he said? I'm like, I heard everything he said. I was standing right there. He goes, he just said that they can just tell when you're speeding. I'm like, I told you they had no evidence of me speeding. I know I wasn't speeding. So here I go to trial, right? I go into trial, And
I thought this was still an arraignment when you went in front of Gillian, or what was his name?
The magistrate is what I just told you about.
Yeah,
then they set me up for a trial date. So I went in for this pretrial. And you know what? Let me just let you listen to what happened and show you. No, they want to cover up this all caps name in these courts. Okay. So just listen. Okay. Let me share this. It's unreal what happened here to me. Unreal.
Let's get his name right.
His name is Judge Timothy Gilligan in Parma, Ohio. And listen to what he did. Unlawfully did.
We're here on 21 TRD 4900, City of Parma versus Luciana Constantino, present court's the defendant. Are you Luciana Constantino?
I am the agent representing that person.
Pardon me?
I'm the agent representing the person that you have written down in all caps name. My name is not written in all caps, in all capital letters.
Well, that's all impressive. I'm going to ask you one more time.
My name
and I'm going to remind you that I have contempt of court powers and I have work to do. This is all good fun and games for you, but I'm not playing. So if you interrupt me again, I'm going to hold you in contempt of court. I'm going to tell you how this will work. I'm going to ask you a couple of simple questions that will not prejudice your case in any fashion. If you don't answer my simple questions that don't prejudice your case, I will find you in contempt of court and I will put you in jail. Are you Luciana Constantino? Yes or no?
I am Luciana Constantino, written with a capital L and capital C.
Okay. Don't tell me such stupid things when I ask you a simple question. I really don't care whether you capitalize your name, the beginning of it, the end of it, or else anything else you do. Yes or no? Are you Luciano Constantino?
I am here representing them. The Luciano Constantino.
I find that you are in contempt of court. I asked you a simple question. You don't want to answer it. You want to delay these proceedings. I don't have time for that.
I don't.
You are hereby sentenced to 30 days in jail.
Okay,
take her away.
I object.
Bailiff, take her away. You're done.
There you go.
Yeah.
In what world? I mean,
and then let's point out
later. In what world does a judge have authority to give you 30 days in jail for spelling your name? For spelling your name.
He's just a guy.
He's a man. He's a man in a black dress sitting up on a stage in a private corporation. That is exactly what's going on here.
You're running a business operation. And
yes.
You're interfering with the collection of the fines and so forth that they impose. Yeah, and then later, of course, when you did your 3 notices to him, you gave him 3 chances to correct your statements under oath that he had acted wrongfully and he had ordered you kidnapped and falsely imprisoned, and you gave him a perfect opportunity, plenty of time to dispute that 3 times, and he never did.
Exactly.
So that's when the People's Court entered its judgment.
Yeah.
Against him, and so.
Yeah. I mean,
there's more that could be done if more people would join us.
Right.
We would be able to prosecute kidnappers.
Right. And just the way that happened to me, 30 days in jail. Oh, it gets better. It gets better, Catherine, doesn't it? Okay. And the reason I only spent, I think, maybe not even 24 hours in jail. And the reason why is because their corrupt prosecutor there in Parma went and talked to the judge. And I want to thank all my supporters, Catherine, Mary Louise. There are so many people. When I was in jail there, everything was pretty quiet. All of a sudden, the phone started ringing off the hook nonstop. And I said, I even told the correction officers there, I'm like, those are my people. Y'all are going to be in trouble. Those are my people calling. And they had recorded and showed me, and the support was overwhelming. And this is probably maybe the only reason that I was let out. They couldn't take the fact that the public, Facebook, Twitter, everybody was talking about what had been done to me. And so the prosecutor and the judge got together and probably said, everybody, we can't hide this. Everybody know we're getting phone calls, crazy, all kinds of phone calls. The prosecutor comes the next morning and pulls me out and says, look, the judge wants to see you. And the judge, if you agree, I already knew I didn't have, I wasn't speeding, but this proves it even more, how corrupt they are and how they didn't have any evidence I was speeding. He says, the judge wants to see you. And if you go in there right now and plead guilty to a loud muffler, he'll let you out today. And I said to him, but I didn't have a loud muffler. What do you mean? He yelled at me and said, okay, do you want to okay, then you want to stay in here 29 more days, or do you want to plead guilty to the loud muffler? That's when a light bulb went off, and I'm like, oh my God, they don't have evidence of me speeding, and I knew it. So this judge just made a deal with the prosecutor to talk me into this kind of collusion, talk me into going into his corrupt private corporation, little Rube there. Nobody else was welcome in. It was just us. Nobody knew I was in there that day. He pulls me in there, and I was told pretty much, if you lie in court and say you had a loud muffler, we'll let you out. If you don't do that, we're going to leave you in jail for 30 days. For what? So I had to go if I didn't want to stay 30 days. And I had, Wednesdays are very important days for me. So, and it was a Wednesday. So I went in and literally had to perjure myself. I was told to perjure myself and lie in order to get out or suffer more abuse. Mind you, while I was in there, I had to be taken to the hospital because they caused nerve damage to my. I mean, I have photos. I had bruises on me, scrapes on me from these handcuffs. It was insane. This was insane. What happened to me over a traffic ticket?
This is a regular feature of their system, where they know that they're convicting the innocent, and they have a special plea for it, because a lot of Americans don't really want to plead guilty to something they're not guilty of. They still haven't figured out that this isn't even a court, but and you hadn't figured that out at that point either. But you learn later it wasn't, and the whole notion of pleading guilty. These are kidnappers. I mean, there's no pleading guilty. It's just nonsense. But they have a special plea called an Alford plea of guilty. That's capital ALFORD, and it means I'm innocent, but I'm going to plead guilty just to get this over with.
Yep. And that's what so many people do. Mm-hmm. And they continue this criminal empire, this whole money-making racket that these courts have, because so many people give in and just plead guilty. They're like, I just want to go home. I just got a job and kids to get home to. And they know this.
Of course. Well, but what they do on most of the tickets or whatever communication they make to you, well, they don't even communicate to you directly. They communicate to your straw person. When you get something from the cabal, they send it to your all capital name, because they know they can't deal with you as the living man or woman directly. So you get something in the mail and it's your all capital name, you send that sucker right back, because it's not addressed to you. People find that
so hard to believe. But I think when you listen to that audio, he became enraged when all I wanted to do was correct the record, and that my name was not spelled. I just wanted the record corrected. But he flipped out and his horns came out. His head started spinning. I mean, you can hear it in his voice. He did not want that on the record.
If you look at the notices that you attach to your petition to OCCR, it points out that all the differences that there really are between the all capital name and the regularly spelled name, that it is substandard English usage to use an all capital name for anything that's not a legal fiction. So it meant something, and he's all like, oh, it doesn't matter, you know, however you want to spell it, you know, it doesn't matter to me. Yeah, it does matter.
Right. And he literally said, he says, I don't care how you spell your name. I don't care if it's capital in the beginning, capital in the end. Mm-hmm. Did it sound like he didn't care, Catherine? I think he cared a lot.
Well, and we explain that, and we even cite the manuals, the style manuals in the notices that are attached to that petition. If you go on the docket section of our website, you can see exactly, it's always in the first notice, all the detail of what they did and why it's wrong, and giving them a due process opportunity to refute that if they can, if they want to, and they basically never do.
Right.
Timothy Gilligan, yeah, okay. It was the first notice, and so if it made no difference, he could have submitted an affidavit of why it didn't make any difference, but he chose not to do so.
Right. Not one of them responded at all to 3 notices that were given to them, asking them for some kind of response, because I claimed that they committed a crime against me. They committed crimes against me. They did not refute it one bit. And what we do, they can't.
They can't, and the thing is too, they have limited authority over this legal fiction that they created themselves, this artificial entity, their imaginary friend, the corporation that they're doing business as. And so they can only deal with other legal fictions. That's why they had to create these artificial entities for us. In their world, you know, only likes can enter into contracts with like entities. So that's why their statutes and codes never once use the terms man or woman, because they know they don't have any authority over men and women. But I wanted to get back to what you get in the mail that's sent to your all capital name, not yours, their all capital name that they created for you. And, you know, you send that back. You send that right back to them. But if you make the mistake of opening it up, then you'll see that there's going to be an extortionate threat in there. You come here and you pay this or else. And, you know, that's common law extortion. It's also extortion even in their system. But people, you know, get terrorized by that, and they think, oh, I'll be arrested if I don't come in. And that's what happened with your situation when you got the ticket. It said right on the ticket.
Right. It literally said, that I could be arrested for not going in regarding the ticket.
Right. So we cannot give up our sovereignty because of threats like that. And the threats might be even greater and even more credible than those in the future. But basically, in many ways, they're paper tigers. They don't have the authority to make the threats that they are making. And when we, the people, understand that we are the ones in charge, now, true, they have more of the guns, perhaps, than we do. But once the people understand that, they are not going to be giving away their sovereignty to their servants. I mean, these people, they're not even our public servants. They're agents of a corporation that got the job that was outsourced from some elected official. And So anyway, but I see a lot of people going down the wrong path and wasting time with tactics like protests, with hiring attorneys, filing 1983 civil rights actions based on the 14th Amendment. And you don't want to rely on the 14th Amendment, folks. The 14th Amendment created a new category of slaves. That's what it did. It purported to take away your rights, your God-given rights that they don't have any authority to do. And instead, you're supposed to be happy with privileges and immunities, whatever they think you ought to have.
We have somebody on here named Don. Do you know who that is?
Yeah, I think I know who Don is.
Okay, can we bring him on? Can we bring him on? Okay.
Sure.
Hi, Don.
Hi.
How are you? Hi.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. I'm sorry, I didn't see you. Okay, it's only been a few minutes. How are you?
Good. Do you want to see me actually?
Sure.
Okay.
Hi, Don. How are you?
Hi. Good. The image isn't very good. It's better on my other computer, but here we are.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Well, hi, Catherine.
Hi, Don.
Yeah.
This is actually somebody I know, face to face. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
We've actually talked about you before.
Yes. Now you know. Now there she is, Luciana Constantino.
Oh, about me.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
I hope it was good.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. She tells me a lot about what she's doing and stuff. And sometimes I still even have a hard time wrapping my wits around what she's doing. And it's just sometimes hard to get a different viewpoint if you're brought up a certain way. And yeah.
And everybody's brought up a certain way to believe that they have all the authority and they have the right to take from you, to kidnap you, to do what they want to you. And you're just raised to obey them. And I mean, the word of God says we are to obey him and that we are not to fear man. We are only to fear him. And so many people have just fallen into the standard of, from the time they're little kids, they're taught, you fear police, you fear the courts, you do what they say, you bow down to them, you do what they say. It's like,
they walk in the room and you stand up.
Yeah, they walk in the room in their black dress, like this Timothy Gilligan walks in the room in his black dress, and you're told to stand up. You stand up. Everybody rise. I don't rise, and I don't.
Oh, really? And how did the judge react to that?
He didn't say anything. No one said anything to me. But if they did, I would let them know I can't rise. It would be against my religion, I only rise or bow down to the Lord my God, and that's the way it is. What are they going to do? Jail me for not rising to a guy in a black dress up on a stage? Come on, please.
Well, maybe he identifies as something else.
You're right. Maybe he does. Maybe he does. Maybe he does.
Yes.
But we just wanted to introduce everybody to, a solution-oriented broadcast that hopefully more people will participate in and see that this is the way it was meant to be. This is what self-government can look like. And that's what we're supposed to be doing. We can't, as we see, we can't entrust it to others, but in particular, not to these legal fiction corporations. So, and they don't even, claim that in their constitutions. They haven't really gotten their stories straight. So, in many ways, although they're always trying to spy on us, we know a lot more about them than they do about us.
We know a lot more about them than they think we know.
Mm-hmm.
A lot that that we won't even say anything right now, but we know. We've got plenty of documentation.
Well, they've written
so much, right? Yeah, yeah, that too.
Article 1, Section 8 gives certain enumerated powers, and then read in conjunction with the 9th and 10th Amendment, it says if those aren't, if you're trying to do something as government and like be a member of the CIA, the FBI, the FDA, the DOJ, any of those, entities that are all corporate, that's not authorized. That's not authorized by Article 1, Section 8. And if it's not authorized, then it's restricted to that authority belongs to the states or to the people, 9th and 10th Amendment. So it's prohibited to the federal so-called government. And
yeah, it'd be really interesting to see how all those things got passed. And, did people ever bring up the fact that they were prohibited and they went through anyways, or was it just hush hush?
Nobody ever brings it up. They're always talking about, well, they're doing this and they're doing that, and they're so corrupt and they're this and they're that, and nobody gets down to the bedrock principle. They don't have any authority to exist. They're prohibited from existing. And nobody wants to talk about that.
So could something be done about that now? I mean, most of the government is like that.
Yes, it is. Yeah. We don't have to authorize that, and I think most Americans would not want to authorize that. And the thing is, we live in a republic, so just because 51% might want to authorize these draconian, groups of people that are operating as corporations, that doesn't mean they can impose their will against the other 49% that don't want it, because the Declaration promised us a government that would be consensual.
Yep.
So,
yeah,
and they ridicule people like us for, oh, you didn't consent. Like the whole notion of consent is you're just stupid if you think you have to consent. And
yeah, but the point is that we didn't even have a choice to consent. We didn't know any better.
Right.
Exactly. But now we do.
Right. It was all fraud, Right. Yeah.
Yeah. If I hold a gun to your head and tell you to sign something, is that consent when you sign? No. But still, that's why in an abundance of caution, we have our people sign, if there's a signature out there somewhere that's going to be used against us, we're going to rebut it when we have time to do that. And so that's why if anybody wants to file in our court, they will have to show that they are willing to take specific steps to free themselves from the presumptions that they're slaves. Because we cannot really, we can't, I wouldn't want to trust my fate to a group of registered voter slaves, I'm not interested in that. And that gets us to another area of self-government that we can probably talk about next time. And because we haven't taken steps there because we don't have enough people. Everybody's scared. Everybody wants to hide under the bed.
Everybody's scared. And, I see a lot of people and I can tell their thing is, we know what's going on, but we don't want to get involved because, I have kids, we have jobs, and, it's not affecting us and our family's fine. And if we get involved, they're going to mess with my family. They're going to mess with us, and what they don't realize is it's only a matter of time. And it is going to affect you. It is going to affect your family, and it is going to affect your kids. And you're going to be here, a year down the road saying, can somebody help me? I mean, they arrested my kid for this, for not saying something or or they arrested my kid for not answering the door or whatever. And you're going to spend $20,000 or more on attorneys trying to help your son get out of jail for something he didn't even do wrong. It will come to your front door. And people don't realize it. They think, no, not me, not me. Yes, it will. I was one of those people that thought that would never happen to me. And it did. And I'll tell you what, this Parma ticket is this compared to what else they did to me in Lake County. And we'll leave that for another day. But the corruption is beyond belief. Beyond belief.
It's years to be corrupt.
It's criminal. It is criminal.
If you work for an entity and their only goal is to make money, and you get rewarded for the most money you make, it's going to lead you to corrupt. I mean, your goal as an employee of them is not to achieve justice. It's to make money, and you'll do whatever means is necessary, especially if you know that your retirement or your future job security is based on that.
Right. I'm going to tell you something. I know somebody whose husband is a police officer. I went to dinner at their house one day, and it was during with this COVID going on, and people were getting arrested, and people were spreading videos all over of people getting arrested for not wearing a mask. Right. And I asked this police officer, I said, okay, knowing that this is only, this is not a law and people have rights, would you arrest somebody if they didn't have a mask on? He said, you know what he said to me? This is a police officer. He was young in the force, so he was only there a couple years. He said to me, yeah, he said, I will do whatever my supervisor tells me to do. I'm like, but you took an oath of office. I'm like, what if what he tells you to do, you know, for a fact is in violation of the Constitution, and you took an oath to protect and defend the Constitution. And he said, I don't care. He said, whatever my supervisor tells me to do is what I'm going to do. He said, my benefits, my bonuses, my retirement, all that is fabulous. I'm not going to risk that.
Well, that's
a
been a couple of years.
Police officer said that to me. I'm sorry?
That's been a couple of years too, and some of that certainty might be starting to slip a little bit because, you know, you can ask them, well, has your supervisor ever been wrong about anything ever that he promised you? Like, I bet if he really is honest with himself, probably not with you, but with himself, he'll realize that, you know, maybe his supervisor isn't really, you know, telling him the straight deal. And you know, I'm sure the supervisor says, go ahead, do this, do that. You'll be covered. You will never be liable. And most of the time they're not. They sort, you know, especially in their systems. In ours, they will be. If anybody has the guts to bring it to us, they get a, you know, 3 notice process going and it's in default, then we will grant them judgment. Anyway, but what we really need is a grand jury so that we can do more than grant monetary judgment. And a common law grand jury, unlike the corporate grand jury, is not run by any of them. It runs itself, and it's supposed to have 25 people in it. This has been done for 800 and some years. And so there's a lot of history behind it, and it's the only way that the people at that time in 1215 could think of to counter tyranny, and that comes from Magna Carta, refers to the common law grand jury. And,
Catherine,
yeah.
I would love, it is just a 1-pager. It was easy to respond to, you know, say something. I'd like to just, here it is. Here is the notice. that we sent Ohio Attorney General Yost and Maureen O'Connor, who was the Chief Justice for the Ohio Supreme Court. They were sent notice of the formation of this court, Ohio Circuit Court of Record, and very simply states, and I love the way this was put together. It says, please be advised that a group of Ohioans who recognize that they are not U.S. citizens have now publicly formed the Ohio Circuit Court of Record, a court of common law and equity. OCCR is also a court of record in part because it administers the common law. And here you go. As you are aware, none of the current corporate tribunals calling themselves courts meets the definition of being a court of record according to the definition of the same provided in the Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition. Our intentions are and have always been peaceful. We are merely fulfilling a part of the responsibility we have to the people of the Ohio Republic. We have no current concern about the measures you may be taking to earn a profit for your employers. However, at such point as those activities or others come to our attention as properly framed claims against living men and women and involved common law torts, crimes, and contracts, breaches, or even statutory offenses, we do not intend as a body to exercise our sovereign judicial authority under the common law as our best human expression of the law of the Creator. As we go through this transition, it is our intention to be appropriately transparent and hope we might accept the same from you. And then here's the acknowledgement by the clerk of our court stating that
they never responded.
That the time went by and neither the Attorney General of the state of Ohio nor the Chief Justice of the Ohio Supreme Court rebutted anything we said or told us you can't do that, or said we're the FBI is coming for you because this is unlawful what you're doing, or nothing. They stayed silent because they know what we've done is lawful, and it's hard for people to fathom this truth, but there it is. Wouldn't the Chief Justice of the Ohio Supreme Court and the Attorney General for the state of Ohio being sent a notice like this? We're forming this court and it's a valid, lawful court. Don't you think they would say, oh no, you can't do that. You're committing a crime by doing that. This is a crime you're committing and we're warning you to stop. Never happened. Never happened.
They have a statute that and I don't know why they enacted it because it applies to them, and that's the sham judicial process statute. And I guess they thought they were going to nail some people with that. And actually it applies to them. What they're running is sham legal process.
That's exactly what it is.
One of their so-called courts of common pleas and municipal courts, every single one of them is running sham judicial process. I think they've been tinkering with that statute recently. It used to define what that meant, and it meant, you're entering judgments without due process of law, for one thing. They took that part out.
Yeah. They'll keep tweaking it to make it work for them.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what they do. Mm-hmm. They create these codes and statutes, and then when they see somebody's winning against it, they'll tweak it a little bit and amend it where, okay, now I can't do this because we said this, we did that code.
It might come back and boomerang back on us. And we're actually the ones that are committing these crimes,
Yeah, well, that's very typical of a criminal, to accuse others of exactly what they're doing.
Correct.
Yeah, projection. Yeah. In psychology, yeah. You accuse somebody else of what you yourself are doing.
Yeah,
and
totally.
And let me tell you what, don't get us wrong. They are big and wide and they are badass and they have a mafia of police officers, sheriffs, attorneys, bar members, and other judges and committees and commissioners, and they have a slew of an army that's going to cover for them.
Corporate media to brainwash you with.
Yep, and the corporate media to brainwash the people. But what they don't understand is we may be small, but our army is so much bigger because our army is headed by God. This is what they don't understand, and they never will. They never will understand that we will move forward and we will accomplish what needs to be accomplished to help the people because God is leading us, and that's who we fear.
I wanted to say too, that any common law assembly and we're not the only ones in America. I think we're the only ones doing it lawfully, but we don't do things for people who are being afflicted by the corporate criminals. They have, this is a do-it-yourself thing, and it only works if you understand the process you're doing. Nobody can do it for you. It's not like hiring an attorney, and we don't recognize attorneys. In a free society, there would be no need for attorneys. But, the more complicated and confusing their statutes and codes are, the greater the perceived need for an attorney. But, if the law of God isn't really very complicated. The golden rule isn't complicated. You don't need to hire an attorney to figure that out when you've crossed the line. But that would be a whole segment of society, leeching off the public that would be in danger. So there's a lot of money at stake if people were to ever understand that we can figure out what's lawful and what isn't lawful. We just go to the Bible and, look at the golden rule and voila, we can figure this out, and we don't need to hire somebody at $500 an hour to tell us, to split hairs over whether subparagraph C1, whatever, conflicts with some other thing that they've enacted. We don't have to be bound by that.
Correct.
So, but once you have the confidence that is in fact the true law, is what's kind of written in our DNA, and it's kind of like in science. They say, I think it's the forget what it's called. Usually, for any scientific phenomenon, the simplest explanation is usually the most accurate, and I think that's how it is with law too. Law, morality, ethics, whatever you want to call it. It's society. It's kind of a spiritual principle that even goes beyond the Bible or Christianity. People have always recognized that societies really don't work very well if you're not trying to treat others as you would have them treat you. That's all it is. And if you don't, if you're just trying to exploit others, you're eventually, the chickens are going to come home to roost. And, that sure has happened, and it is happening.
So we're going to continue these podcasts and, try to enlighten people on their God-given rights that cannot be taken away, and how they've been fooled into believing they can. And so many people have given up. I think of in my few years of an ordeal I've been through with these courts, and trying to find out what in the world has happened here, and finally learning, studying and learning and researching, finding out exactly what's going on. And it's ugly. The truth is very ugly, what these courts and judges and attorneys and bar members are involved in. It's very evil. It's very ugly. And they are harming so many families unknowingly to them who hire them and sit there and bow down to them and do as they say. And we're going to continue doing these podcasts, and we hope that they get shared, and we hope that people will come forward. And we do want to hear what's happened to other people. But I think that, Catherine, I think you'll agree, we also want to make people exposing what's happened. We already know. We know how bad it is. When you come to us, we want to help you find a solution with your problem. We already know how bad it is. We already know it's bad, and we'll do what we can, in every way we can.
Well, we will help them find their own solution.
Yeah.
And we think that solution is not to be found in the same place among the same perpetrators that caused the issue to begin with.
Exactly. So, I don't know about you, but through the few years that I've been through this travel through hell, through courts, and what has been done to me, I have run into so many parents and grandparents and other people who have they've given up. They have spent their last dime that they have. They have had to sell their homes for money to pay attorneys. While we know that these attorneys are not working for them, they're working to keep this case continued, keep this case going, and make money for the judge, for the social worker, make money for the prosecutors, make money for their county. And it's disgusting what we have found out, and it's all true. And it took me a while to realize it, but what kills me today is knowing all the people that have committed suicide over giving up. People have committed suicide over what these courts have done to them.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And if they only knew, it wouldn't have to be this way.
Innocent people that committed no crime, did no one any harm. And after so many years of fighting a system that pulled them in to their private corporation to make money off of them, they just gave up and committed suicide. This is very sad. It's unacceptable.
We know that there are other forces at work to tear down the country, morally, spiritually, financially, through making us sick, all the ways that they have. But this is something we can do that really, regardless of common law under God is useful not only in interpersonal disputes, but really every issue I think we have can be boiled down to an interpersonal dispute. We've got geoengineering going on with the planet. The Lord only knows, what's going to happen with that. The chemtrails, all this stuff that is endangering our health. And, we can say, well, this 3-letter agency is doing this and that 4-letter agency is doing that. There are people behind this. Let's don't miss the fact that every single one of these criminal acts are being perpetrated by people.
Exactly.
And the people are within the reach of every common law court that might choose to form in any of our 50 state republics. And they are independent, sovereign state republics, always have been. And, the people, not to be confused with, our jurisdiction in Ohio Circuit Court of Records, and others may decide to form another court in Ohio too and claim the same jurisdiction. That's fine. But they have we have authority over the Ohio Republic, and in other states they have their own republic. That's not the same as in our case, state of Ohio. That they make it confusingly similar name, and but it's not the same. State of Ohio is not the original Ohio Republic, and state of Ohio is, a few buildings in Columbus and some paperwork. It's a mental construct, and everything else is Ohio, the Republic. So
on our next show, I think our podcast, I think we'll go through how people can go onto our website. They can click on the go into our website. They can click on. Oh, hold on, I made this.
The other website, the court website.
Oh, yeah, okay. On the court website, if they click on info links, okay. On there, they can click on Dunn and Bradstreet. Mm-hmm. And once they do, and we'll go over this more thoroughly, I think we should, on our next podcast. And then when they go on there, they can search for another company. It's a company. And for instance, they could type in Supreme Court. They could put in their state, for instance, Ohio, and they could search, and they will see that the Supreme Court these are all corporations, and these addresses for so many Supreme Courts of Ohio is all the different courts. They all run under the Supreme Court. See, if you like, this one here, for instance, on Marconi in Columbus, is I believe the 10th district, which is a federal court. That's why it's Supreme Court under the United States. But then you have other courts that are Supreme Court of Ohio, and you'll see the addresses are different. These are your not your courts, but the courts that are operate the private corporations operating in your county. And you could find which address is yours, and they're all running under the Supreme Court of Ohio, a private corporation.
I don't understand that. How can there be so many Supreme Courts of Ohio? I mean, that sounds like there should only be one.
The branches. They're branches in each of the 88 counties. And, well, some of the counties, they'll clump 3 counties together for administrative convenience.
Yeah.
Oh.
And they're all doing business under the Supreme Court of Ohio.
They're right. Branches, subsidiaries, and Supreme Court of Ohio is the parent corporation, but it has corporations that are senior to it also.
So we're already an hour and a half.
Look at corporate law, which is just another mental construct, but that's how they have organized it. I'm seeing over the years, I've been looking on Dun and Bradstreet, and they are becoming more and more centralized in their administration. They're trying to run a tighter ship apparently, and having it more centralized. They're big on centralization, and that bears out in the way they decide their cases too. There are specific rules about when you can disagree with another decision that's similar in another county, or but you have to do what the Supreme Court of Ohio says you have to do if you're a lower appellate so-called court. And those are just appellate rules. Those are just corporate rules, really. But we think of them as, law, and they're not.
Right.
So.
That's going to be an interesting show. It's going to be really interesting. Can you type in a person's name there too? and see that they're a corporation?
That happens sometimes. I have done that. Yeah.
Right.
Some people will incorporate their name.
Or if you Google Wiki Corporation, you can go in there and type a person's name, and usually the corporations you're involved in will pop up under Wiki
Yeah, but I'm saying
Corporation.
the corporation of the person's name. You know, you were talking earlier about, you know, capital name of a person,
Right.
you know, is the corporation. I was just wondering if we could search that.
I don't, sometimes they will say, some people think that our all capital name is a corporation. I don't believe that it is. It's a legal fiction because it doesn't have any existence really, but it's not, they never took the time or trouble to incorporate it. Some people have chosen to do that to their name. So, and I've seen that, you know, like say Elvis Presley, you know, was a man, spelled the normal way, but all capital Elvis Presley or Elvis Presley Enterprises, you know, those are businesses, those are corporations, and there's probably dozens of them, you know, that use the name, but they have their separate legal existence. Now, here's the thing, and why just being a corporation, just having a profit motive is bad, is counterproductive for the people, has no business in government, is that a corporation has limited liability. So the people who incorporated that corporation or who are agents or shareholders in that corporation are in their world, they can harm people, they can produce products or goods and services that harm others without the corporation or the people. Well, the corporation could be liable, but the people won't be liable in their world. That's the reason for the incorporation. It's a great business model if your business is crime. You know, you can commit all the crime you want, and the only criminal is considered to be the corporation. But you know what? A corporation can't commit crimes because it doesn't really exist. It's just a mental construct. People commit crimes, and they use the corporate structure that they made up themselves to facilitate it and bamboozle their victims with. That's all it is. It's just a con game. That's all it is. And once we see that, we don't have to be taken in by it. Because we don't recognize their corporations, and we don't recognize their bar members either, because the bar members are prohibited by the original 13th article from holding positions of public trust. So that knocks out about 97% of Congress, and you know, all the so-called judges in the tribunals. You know, they can't be bar members. And there's another reason even in their system, and that is that bar members take their marching orders from the International Bar Guild. So they're taking orders from a foreign power, and that's prohibited by the Foreign Agent Registration Act. In their system, you're supposed to register as a foreign agent, and none of these bar members do that. I never did. I didn't know about it. So they have no authority, either in their world or ours.
Right.
And so anyway, so what do you think, Luciana? We're going to try and keep it at Thursday in this time slot, or we'll...
I think that sounds good for now. Well, this is our first podcast, as imperfect as it may be. We're trying, and we'll continue to do that, and hope that some other people will join us and ask questions or make comments, and we want to know what other people are thinking about what we're talking about, because a lot of people have exposed and talked about all the crimes being committed against them with these attorneys and bar members in courts, and with no remedy on how to end this from unjust criminal activity happening toward them. And we are introducing a solution here, and we hope more people will get on board. So yeah, it's been an hour and 40 minutes. I guess we'll end. But yeah, we're looking at what, Catherine, maybe every Thursday around 8 o'clock doing a podcast. Right. And if we around 8, and if we decide there's an urgency and we need to throw another podcast in there in between, or our requested, and it looks like we need to get more podcasts out there, that would be great, then we'll do so. But for now, it looks like Thursdays at 8, right, Catherine?
Right. And feel free to contact us, either through this website or the OCCR website that shows contact information also.
Okay. And we will put the link to the website, the link to the Jones Plantation, and a couple more links in there to help people research a few things. Okay. Thanks, Don. Thanks, Don, for joining us.
Yes, thank you.
You're very welcome.
All right.
This is very interesting. And I like this topic. It's so new to me still. It takes time for it to sink in that it's actually real. And
all the information's out there. Just got to research it, and we'll show you where a lot of it is. It's taken us years to uncover so much.
Yeah,
right?
That's what you really got to do, is just keep pounding it home, and work on the basics, and it'll sink in eventually.
Correct.
Yeah.
All right. Well, God bless you all. God bless everybody. And we look forward to seeing you next Thursday. Okay?
Thanks a lot, everybody.
All right.
All right.
See you soon. All right.
Thanks.
Good.